The M4A1, probably one of the most popular weapons in first-person shooters across the board, one of the most well-known weapons. And in today's video, I have two builds because I just couldn't figure out which one I like the best, but they're a little bit different from one to the other. So one's a little bit more of a well-rounded build that you can use at longer ranges, and the other one is more of a CQB build. So starting off with a clean slate here, the M4A1's kind of special because it acts a little bit more like an SMG with the damage multiplier of an AR. So you get that high damage multiplier for headshots, but the lower range or lower max range of the SMG. So you're doing 20 damage at 25 meters. So for the well-rounded build, we're going to start off with that one. With the barrel, I went with the AR Trench Standard Barrel Combo. So this gives you plus 1 meters in range and gives you extra recoil control. So install that and then calibrate this with plus 50 grams and plus 10 millimeters to get a little bit more firing stability and extra muzzle velocity, because this weapon will be used a little bit at longer ranges. For the muzzle, so I went with the Bastion Horizontal Compensator. The reason being there is quite a bit of horizontal recoil here. As you can see, this is what I'm trying to correct because at range especially, this is a lot more difficult to compensate for when you're shooting than just flat out vertical recoil. So equip that. And then for the foregrip, I also went with the Secret Order Bevel foregrip, which will further correct that horizontal recoil. So you can see it's getting a lot more straight here, which is what we want. So install that, and then I calibrated this with plus 20 grams. For the mag, you have a lot of choices here. I chose to go with the 45 round extended mag. You get a little bit less penalties on handling than with the drum mag here, and you can also put a mag assist on there, which is why I went with this one. Same thing with the 60 rounder here. You get a large penalty on handling and a pretty substantial penalty on control, as opposed to this one. So I chose to go with the 45 rounder since I'm using this at a little bit longer ranges. I have more time to reload. And then with the mag assist. For the rear grip, AR Heavy Tower Grip, such a good grip, which is why it's on a lot of my builds. So go ahead and install that, then calibrate this with plus 50 grams to get plus 6% extra control. For the base, I chose to go with the balanced grip base. Again, positives across the board, which is always awesome. For the stock, so you do have the option to put a stock kit on here. Most of the time it's not worth it, so I just choose to put just basic stock on here. And for this one, I chose to go with the M16A4 stable stock. Now the stats aren't great on here. You only get plus 5 control, which is, not the best stock out there. Calibrate this with plus 50 millimeters in thickness to get a little bit more firing stability, but it also gives you the ability to add a cheek pad, which gives you plus 1 control and extra stability. So making this stock better than it seems at the beginning. So for the cheek pad, I calibrated this with plus 50 grams and plus 50 millimeters to get extra control and extra firing stability. For the sight, I always mostly go for RDSs. Magnified optics just aren't my thing for ARs in this game. So I went with a riser here because I will be putting a laser on there as well. And then I just went with the XRO quick response sight. And then I calibrated this with negative 20 millimeters, and that's it. Now you have 5 slots for actual handguard panels, and then the upper rail you can only put a laser on here, so go ahead and slap on a laser of your choice. I chose the red one because it fits the aesthetic of the weapon skin, and then I put 3 times Ranger handguard panels on here to get extra recoil control, so slap 3 of those on there. And then for these two, I chose to go with Casey Hound handguard panels to get a little bit more stability to reduce the overall aim punch when you're getting fired at. So this is the well-rounded build. It performs just fantastic at range. If we look at the stats here real quick at the detailed, you can see it's pretty much only vertical recoil, which makes it incredibly easy to control even at range. Moving on to the CQB build. Now this build can still be used at decent ranges, but it just performs a lot better in CQB because it has better handling and better accuracy. So I went with the Spec Ops Integrally Suppressed combo. Now this gives you plus 2 meters in range, and surprisingly enough, this is more range than my well-rounded build, but that's because there's a suppressor on here. And then I calibrated this with negative 10 millimeters to get a little bit of extra ADS speed, and that negative muzzle velocity, not the end of the world. You kind of compensate for that with the suppressor. For the foregrip, I chose to go with the X25U ankle combat grip, probably the best one for CQB weapons. You get a lot of extra control and extra accuracy, so install that. And then I calibrated this with plus 9 slots and plus 20 millimeters to get extra stability when moving and extra control. For the mag here, considering we are going with more of a CQB build, I don't mind having a penalty on control. The handling sucks, but we can make up for that. So I installed this one as opposed to this one because you get even more of a penalty. So I went with the 60 round extended mag, and then I simply slapped on a mag assist on there to get a little bit of that handling back. For the rear grip, again, heavy tower grip, just such a good grip because it gives you an extra slot, and then plus 50 grams, negative 20 millimeters to get extra hipfire aim speed and a little bit of extra control. For the grip mount, again, balanced grip base, just awesome grip base there. For the stock, I chose to go with the M4 recoil buffer tube to get a large boost in accuracy and a large boost in handling, so making up for that lost handling from earlier. And then with this one, plus 50 grams and plus 50 millimeters to get a little bit of extra control, a little bit of extra firing stability, just because we lost a lot of that earlier. For the sight on here, so I went with, again, a riser and just the RDS of your choice. The build I was using had like a panoramic on there, but you can pick whichever one you want. Just put that on there. And then for this specific one, I reduced the zoom by 25x and also reduced the eye relief by 20 millimeters. In the build I'm using, when you're going to see footage of this build, I didn't have a riser on here, and then I noticed that like the laser light on the front was kind of in the way. That's why I put it on here later. This, I also put a laser light combo on here. And then for the 5 patches, I chose to go with the Casey Hound handguard panels because I was getting a lot of aim punch if I didn't put these on, and when you're getting shot and you're firing at somebody and your gun's shaking all over the place because you have a lot of aim punch, it kind of sucks. So I kind of wanted to mitigate a little bit of that. But this build is also fantastic. It does decent at range as well, but it's got a lot more of that horizontal recoil, which I corrected in the well-rounded build, which is why I recommend using this in a little bit of a closer quarters situation. So overall, the M4A1, you know, it's kind of a meta weapon in Delta Force, as it is in most games. I tried to make a really long range build for the M4A1. I just wasn't, it just didn't feel very good. This weapon feels a lot better at those, you know, 50-ish, even 100-meter range with the well-rounded build. I was trying to build something that could fire, you know, max damage at up to, I think, 29 meters or something, and I know it didn't perform up to my standards, which is why I completely left that build aside and focused on the well-rounded build and then like the CQB build that I went for. Just a fantastic weapon. I've been putting off making a build video for the M4A1 because, again, just the trope of it always being a meta weapon in most first-person shooters, and I always like to try out different weapons and see how they perform and not use the weapons that like everybody's using in a specific shooter. But the M4A1, very, very powerful weapon. You can mow down people with both of these builds regardless of how you're playing. And again, both of them can kind of be used in the same situations, but one is just a little bit better in CQB and one is just a little bit better in medium to longer range combat because of that easy to control recoil. So in order to use the well-rounded build, the weapon level is level 49, so slightly lower than a CQB build, which comes in at level 60 for the integrally suppressed barrel. And the weapon itself unlocks at level 14, so you get it pretty early on, but it is unfortunately only available to the assault class, so it kind of really restricts how often you can use this weapon if you prefer playing other classes, which is kind of unfortunate. So the weapon share code for both of these weapons will be in the description down below, as well as in the top pinned comment. There's also G-sheets down there if you want to go and look at all the weapon builds I've made since the launch of Delta Force. I'll leave you with highlight clips of me using both of these builds, and thank you to GH_18-F3J for recommending I make a video for the M4, as I'm way overdue to make one. In any case, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and as always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.
Roger.